All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we are jumping right into Chapter 3 of our source material. We're going to focus on what is, you could argue, the single most vulnerable period for a young person's mental health when it comes to smartphones, the early teenage years. So let's tackle this huge question. Why this specific age range? Why are 13, 14, and 15-year-olds so uniquely vulnerable? It's not just about them having more freedom. The real answer goes way deeper, right into the very wiring of the brain itself, which is going through this massive and kind of risky reorganization during these exact years. To really get what's going on, we've got to start with the neurobiology. The brain of a teenager between 13 and 15 is, well, it's incredibly powerful, but it's also wildly out of balance. And that imbalance creates the perfect storm for all the pressures that social media throws at them. So neuroscientists have this key concept to explain it, the prefrontal cortex gap. And you could think of it like this. The part of the brain that's supposed to say, hey, wait a second, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Well, that part's still under construction. But at the exact same time, the part of the brain that handles big emotions and rewards, it's firing on all cylinders. I mean, it's more sensitive than it will be at almost any other point in their entire life. Now, this just lays it out perfectly, right? You've got the limbic system, which is like a superpowered accelerator, just floored. And it's incredibly sensitive to things like what their friends think of them. But then you have the prefrontal cortex, the brakes, which is still being built. In fact, it won't be fully done for another decade. So you've got this huge mismatch, this brain that is literally all gas and no brakes, right at the moment we hand them a device that's built for constant social feedback. And here's the kicker. This brain state isn't just some unlucky coincidence. As we're about to see, it's a vulnerability that social media platforms are almost perfectly engineered to take advantage of, creating these really powerful cycles of compulsive use. Okay, so this is the engine that drives that compulsive behavior. Every single notification, a like, a comment, a new follower, it triggers this little release of dopamine, which is the brain's feel-good chemical. For that hypersensitive teen brain we just talked about, that hit feels amazing, and it powerfully reinforces the behavior. It's like a tiny little reward that tells the brain, hey, do that again. It's a neurological trap, and honestly, it works incredibly well. And this is so important to understand. This isn't just about kids wasting time on their phones. This constant dopamine loop actually measurably harms their developing ability to control their own impulses. And the effects just spill over into every part of their life. Suddenly, homework is a huge struggle. They might take more social risks, and they find it incredibly hard to focus on anything that doesn't give them that same instant reward. Now, where does all this compulsive behavior lead? Well, one of the first and most damaging places is sleep. That late-night glow from the phone screen is a direct attack on a teen's sleep, and it kicks out this really dangerous spiral that leads right into serious mental health issues. I want you to really lock this number in your head, 8 to 10 hours. That's not just a nice suggestion, it's a biological requirement for a brain that's going through that massive rewiring we just talked about. But the reality is, with phones in the mix late at night, hitting this target is nearly impossible for most teens. And here's the science. That blue light from the screen literally tricks the brain into thinking it's still daytime. This stops the production of melatonin, which is the hormone that tells your body, hey, it's time to sleep. Studies showed this can push back their bedtime by as much as an hour. And maybe even worse, it wrecks the quality of the sleep they do get. They end up in this state of constant low-grade sleep deprivation. And this is where you see that vicious cycle just lock into place. Being sleep-deprived makes a teenager much more likely to develop anxiety or depression. But then, those very conditions make it even harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. Poor sleep fuels poor mental health, which in turn fuels even poorer sleep. You see how that works? It's a downward spiral that just feeds on itself. Now, it's really important to remember that not every teen's experience is the same. In fact, a huge factor in all of this is something really simple: where they live. The experience of a 14-year-old with a smartphone can be completely different depending on their zip code. So this table kind of tells three completely different stories. You've got your urban teens who are facing the most intense pressure, tons of screen time, constant FOMO, and major sleep issues. Then in the suburbs, it's often this tricky middle ground where kids are caught between their parents' rules and what all their friends are doing. But then you look at rural teens, and the story changes again. They might have less social media pressure, but they face this unique danger of social isolation, combined with way less access to mental health support if things go wrong.
The point is, nobody's immune here. The dangers just show up in different ways.
Okay, so given everything we've just talked about, all these different risks, what can we actually do? What's one of the most effective things that can help protect these kids?
Well, experts are really starting to rally around one simple but super powerful idea they call sundown time. And the rule is dead simple. All screens get put away 1 to 2 hours before bed. And I don't mean just turned off. I mean physically moved out of the bedroom. That simple act of creating physical distance is one of the single best things you can do to protect their sleep and their mental health.
But, and this is a huge but, the solution might be simple, but putting it into practice is anything but easy. Why? Because the platforms themselves have created this deep-seated anxiety, this fear of missing out that makes teens really fight against putting the phone away. And that means it takes a ton of empathy, a ton of communication, and a ton of consistency from parents to actually make it happen.
So I want to leave you with this final thought because it really captures what's at stake here. That little blue glow in their bedroom late at night. It's not just stealing sleep. It's stealing the building blocks for their future, their focus, their stability, their resilience. And it really leaves us with a tough question. What are we willing to do to help them get that future back?